This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast presented by ClutchPoints, powered by DraftKings. Like, follow, and subscribe. Rate us, review us, all that other fun stuff. Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. My name is Sheldon Alexander, and I'm joined, as always, by Matt Russell, sports betting professional and creator of The Window, available on Substack and wherever you get your podcast. We're into week 2 of the NFL season, my dude. How are you feeling? How are you doing? How did you enjoy week 1?
It was good right up until 5 minutes left of the Bills and Ravens game. I think, like many, it's funny, right? Before all these games, I try to stay kind of tunnel vision. I don't want to hear about who's got what or this guy or that guy or whatever. And then a game like that happens, and part of the thing that we do at the window is we talk about this stuff after the fact, because whether it's kind of following somebody on social media or listening to a podcast on Tuesday about the previous week, you kind of want to talk to somebody about it, right? You want to hear, I go and I play golf on Monday morning, and the guys that I play golf with don't follow the NFL, and so I'm talking about how I just need to walk in the wilderness for 4 hours. I don't even need a golf club, and they're like, "Why? What happened last night?" And I'm like, "Oh man, it's gonna take me 4 hours to kind of flush this out." And it's they didn't even know that the Ravens blew that game. But what I was gonna say was then on Monday or Tuesday, you start hearing all of the other sort of sharper sports betting minds, right, talking about being on the Ravens in that game, and you're like, yeah, because that was the right bet, and you sit back and you go, was I supposed to do something else? Was I supposed to pick the Bills, hoping that they would go down 15 points with an extra point still to come, and then everything in the universe happening the way that it does? And listen, the idea is that we make really good bets, and sometimes, listen, a really good bet means that in theory you're going to be a heavy favorite to win that bet in the fourth quarter, and every once in a while it just goes absolutely south. And so everything was pretty kind of kosher right up until the point where that thing went south on Sunday. And so I said on the pod that I do on Tuesdays, I'm like, this is why I don't do them on Mondays, because something might happen on Monday Night Football, and if it does, it does. Of course, sure enough, a similar-ish type of thing went my way, in that JJ McCarthy ends up taking an anytime touchdown plus 550 in at the same time that they hit the over in that game that didn't look like it was really had any chance of going over. But I'm honestly, I think I would trade it for the Ravens game, because I had that in contests and all that kind of stuff too. So, right, as much as these are theoretically equal, when there's contest stuff involved, they are not equal. So again, a little bit heartening to hear from people going yeah, man, I was on the Ravens. Can you believe that? Da 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 da. Because we're all in this together fundamentally. So you and I are in this together. I can't wait to hear what the record was this past week, because I'm not writing down what you end up going with. I'm always on the edge of my seat to find out how it went in week 1 for you as well.
Well, the interesting part is I feel like the primetime games, Monday night and Sunday night, are perfect examples of what I hope people listen to this pod and get from it, right? In terms of, you make bets and sometimes the outcome is against you, but I would make that bet again, right? I would bet on the 100%. Ravens again. Obviously, there's a 99% chance that they were going to win at one point by a lot. Yeah. Not even, do you know what I mean? So you understand that the outcome doesn't always go your way, but you're just hoping that you're putting yourself in the right position, that hopefully you come out on the right side, right? But that doesn't happen all the time. 100%. So you have a crazy comeback in that game. You have another good comeback on Monday night. And of course, I was on the wrong side of both of those. Oh no, sorry. I think the Ravens won because we did the pod on Wednesday. So the Ravens line was actually plus 1.5. So they actually covered just because of us making that bet, or me making that bet on the Wednesday when we did the pod.
I probably said something dumb, 1 was probably not going to matter. And of course, it actually absolutely does matter in that game.
Again, the insanity that took place in that game.
It is,
right?
It is.
Seeing the high level performances from Josh Allen, from Lamar, from Derrick Henry, from Ed Oliver, just a crazy, crazy game. It was such a great reminder as to why football is back and why we love the NFL so much, because it lives up to the hype Like so many good games
Yeah.
already, which makes me excited to get back to what we do here. Even if the point is that my record last week was 6-10 against the spread. So I mean, listen,
Okay.
not off to a good start, but that's okay. We're on to week 2, like Mr.
Mhm.
Belichick would say. And for the folks that might be new to what we do here, I'm going to go ahead and give a pick on each and every game against the spread. Matt comes in with the information and education on where the line was, where it is, and where it could be going heading into kickoff. I then try to come out on the other side with a much more informed pick. I play the role of the viewer. Sometimes Matt convinces me to change my pick, and other times, foolishly, I don't listen. But that's the joke. That's the show. That's the bit, if you're paying attention. And to those of you who have been rocking with us for 6 years, more power to you. I respect that. I don't think that really sunk into me until like this past week when like just going through the process again,
Yeah.
of like making the
Yeah.
picks, sending everything out, having the pod go
Right.
up, having like people in the mentions, talking about what their picks are, like, and I'm like, wait, how long? Like 6 years is a long time. And I had to like go back and be like, wait, there was 1 year we just did it on my page. There's another year on, what was that other company called again? Oh yeah. Okay. And then that was the year I had COVID and then missed like half the season, right? It was just, there's like so many
Yeah.
things along the way that you're like 6 years. That's a run.
Yeah.
That's a run. That's a solid run. And I like that.
Yeah.
But as
We're
mentioned,
going, buddy.
enough about us, enough about me.
Yeah. Let's get into
As I
this.
mentioned, week 2, coming off a 6-10 record, I'm trying to pick up the pace here. What better place to start than Thursday night football? You got the Commanders at the Packers. Packers 3.5-point favorites at home. The Packers looked like a team that was ready to win their division last week. Solid home win against the Lions. Micah even got his moment late, looking good on a defense that was already doing pretty well, but they played like the favorites in the NFC. The Commanders, if we're being honest, they did not look that great last week. They kind of had the Giants hang around. And if Russ was able to do anything, I don't know where that game might have ended up, but it's a short week
100%.
and you got a team traveling on the road. Short week. I'm going to take the home team. I'm going to lay the 3.5 points, even though I don't like playing the extra half point, but I'm going to lay the half point because home team, I think this is a weight class thing here, where I still don't think the Commanders are who we think they were from last year. Whereas I'm like really digging into the Packers and what they might be. 3.5 is tough, but they're at home. They're rolling. I like the vibes. Vibes are high. Let's go.
That's all right. Okay. Yeah, this is interesting. Like the Packers game, I had it on the top screen, sort of second tier, because I needed to watch our Denver Broncos, which was our survivor pick. The plan was, hopefully Denver takes a 2-score lead. Hopefully Denver takes a 2-score lead into the half, and we can start moving some stuff around. But like, if you're the survivor pick, like you're just getting, main screen sort of credit until otherwise, forcing me to go a different way by blowing a team out. Never happened. So I'm just sort of constantly kind of looking up, got a couple other screens going for some of the other games, of course. And so, I remember looking up and they're being like, oh yeah, Michael Parsons played like 3 snaps. And this was like second quarter, like before halftime, but like a pretty good chunk of time into the game. And I'm just like, oh, like they are mega easing this guy into the deal. And then of course, like Green Bay wins pretty comfortably. Then you hear people talking about like Micah Parsons with like dominant force and like just giving it to Penei Sewell and so on and so forth. And I was like, I was not like locked into that point where they started to unleash Micah Parsons, because it didn't feel like he was going to play all that much. And I think he ended up with like 30 snaps or something like that. But they're going to unleash him when Detroit got into a mode where they had to throw the ball to play catch up in that game, right? And so it'll be interesting to see on a short week, like what level of involvement Parsons is going to have, especially since, we're talking about a considerably different quarterback in Jaden Daniels as Jared Goff, right? Like we're not talking about the statuesque, like, put a target on him, go seek him type thing, right? Micah Parsons, in theory, could run himself out of a few plays because Jaden Daniels is that good. And he just had to deal with the Giants pass rush, which was the only thing that the Giants had going for them in that game. And like you said, If Russell Wilson's able to do anything in that game, they probably cover that number because the Commanders took so long to kind of pull away because it just felt like the Giants were causing them problems on the offensive side. The thing is, we have to be vigilant about this Packers team, right? It's head on a swivel type stuff here, where because this is only one game and we are now in like overreaction week, as everybody likes to call it, we kind of have to make some decisions about what we think we saw in that first game. And so the Packers, was it a matter of them going, all right, we have this game against the Detroit Lions in the first game of the season. We need to put all our energy from a game planning perspective into beating the Lions because it's going to matter that much more than, say, oh, I don't know, beating the Commanders 4 days later. So the concern that I have about this number opening at -3.5, which does, by the way, sort of in the like psychology of sports betting, does sort of indicate that you probably should take the Packers because it is kind of asking you by giving you the hook to say, hey, come on in, take the Commanders. Water's warm. You're getting the hook on the field goal. And I look at that and I go like immediately, I'm like red flag here. In an NFL where we go -1.5, -2.5 on like half the games, now you're going to give me the team that went to the NFC Championship and you're going to give me 3.5 points and all this. I kind of go like, uh-oh, like something's up. And so when I go into our market ratings, I go, all right, well, how much did the Packers get upgraded based off of that game last week? And so I have them not, I'll put it this way, if based on their rating that they're currently at, they would be about a -2.8 against the Lions last week. Well, that's
Mhm.
kind of what the number was, right? It was like -2.5. And so, like, the Packers were getting a pretty big boost. Obviously, the Parsons trade led to that. And we talked about it last week where it was like, yeah, this number, I don't think it's going to get to 3, but like, this is implying that the Packers are better than the Lions. And then so the Packers go and prove, kind of without a shadow of a doubt, at least for one game, that they are better than the Lions. And so we go, okay, well, this number being, as we like to kind of assign out of 100 here, they're a 64 out of 100 type of a team, which is that sort of second tier. Like, we're not super sure about them making like a NFC championship game. There's only 3 teams rated higher than them, the Eagles, the Bills, and the Ravens. But if we're looking at this from a macro perspective and we go, no, like this Packers team looked like a Super Bowl contender, looked like an NFC championship type contender, then like maybe the rating should be even a little higher than 64 because, by the way, the point spread from last week, if you sort of went retroactive to it, you go, yeah, maybe the point spread for last week should have been -3.5 against the Lions. And there was nothing really that the Commanders did beyond the fact that obviously they won and covered, and usually you get a boost for that. But there wasn't anything when you're watching that game, and I watched that game pretty closely as well. Yeah, there was nothing from the Commanders that was like, okay, this team needs to be bumped up here. And so I just kind of look at it and I go, it looks like both teams won and covered, and both teams' rating didn't really change all that much. But
Mhm.
when you're actually watching it and you're seeing the Packers pretty dominant against a Lions team that, by the way, like this week, we might find out that the Lions are still really, really good. It might just have been a really, really good team losing to a potential Super Bowl caliber team, which just means that like maybe everybody was right over the course of the summertime when you started hearing buzz about even before the Parsons trade about people liking the Packers. We had them to win the NFC North before the Parsons trade. So I think maybe just everybody's kind of right about really liking the Packers and thinking they might be like the team this year in the NFC North. At which point, then yeah, you would kind of like the Packers, even though that 3.5, and maybe especially because it's 3.5, even though that 3.5 is sort of saying like, hey, Commanders, come on in. And you're right, right? Like about the Thursday night, like the favorite on Thursday night, like it's we're what, 15 years in here or something like that, 20 years in on Thursday night, football, and just going like, yeah, like it always feels like the home favorite is like, bumped up too high. Oh, like this is too many points. And then sure enough, like we watched the game and the favorite, who is probably obviously the better team, probably has the better coaching staff, is more prepared on a short week and ends up winning, relatively comfortably or at least covering the spread. So, going to be hard for me to argue with this necessarily. A few more things that I kind of have to dig into over the next day or so. Again, it's Wednesday morning. So
Mhm.
while the game is Thursday night, there's nothing strong enough for me to be like, hey, Shell, like you need to turn this car around on the Packers. It's entirely possible. And listen, I would love to see the Lions game this week before we see the Packers game, because that would certainly help, like, even validate further the Packers win. But yeah, man, like this might be that team this year, and if we're all just right about it, like it doesn't really make sense to kind of fade that this early in the season.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I just needed to see some more from the Commanders last week, right? Like they in a game where, of course, the spread was what 6 points. I think it was 5.5 by the time like the game kicked off or
Hmm.
whatever. But
Yeah.
Russell Wilson was not moving the ball at all, right? Like he was doing
No.
literally nothing, and the Giants were still like in the
Yeah.
game. You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
the score, the final
Yeah.
score kind of like doesn't tell you the story of that game really. And the Giants pass rush was crazy. So I don't
Yeah.
know. It'll be interesting to see for sure on the short week and how that plays out. But yes, I will be laying the points with said Green Bay Packers at 3.5 points. And of course, as we know, there's obviously way more games. But before we head to Sunday's action, a brief little message. Football is back, and so is your shot at big wins with DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. Your game day instincts can score you real money fast. Here's the play. Just pick more or less on two or more player stats, from breakout rookies to elite QBs, and unlock the upside every snap brings. The better your calls, the bigger your payout. As I look into my DraftKings app, I'm rolling with the reigning MVP, Josh Allen. Give me more on his passing yards. Same thing goes for CJ Stroud. I want more on his passing yards as well. And we go over to rushing. Give me more on Derrick Henry rushing yards. Let's go. And here's the kickoff bonus. You DraftKings customers get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry on your first pick set. This season, play your player instincts. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code CLUTCH. That's code CLUTCH and play $5. Get $50 in Pick 6 bonus picks. Make the call, ride the upside in partnership with DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promo. As we head on to Sunday's action, we start with a big boy matchup in fact, a Super Bowl rematch. Eagles minus
Yeah.
a 1.5 in Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. You kind of looked like you were like, wait, what game are we talking about here? Like I
It
caught you
was
off
because I was
guard
like
there.
I was looking at the 1 o'clock. And I was like, "What's happening at 1 o'clock?" I
No,
can't wait
no,
to find
no.
out. And then you went right to 4 o'clock. I was like,
We're
"Yeah, you're right. The biggest of all the boys, right?
right. The
Super Bowl
biggest of
rematch.
all.
Like, yeah,
Let's go. Let's go. First off, when was the last time the Chiefs were underdogs at home? Right? That was like a meaningful game. Anyways, the
right.
Chiefs, again, underdogs at home, slight underdogs, 1.5 underdogs. And I don't know. I just think this is a bad matchup for the Chiefs, a super physical team, pound the rock type team, and the Eagles, defensive line pressure. Hopefully, well, I mean, they'll be missing a big part of their defensive line, right? As Jalen Carter suspended, right, for this game. I'm pretty sure I saw that.
No, he's
No?
not suspended. No, no, he got
Oh,
a 1 game suspension, but
okay.
because he played 0 snaps in the first game, that was the game that he
That's
was
what they did?
suspended for.
I totally
Yeah,
missed
it
that.
was just so that they could fine him, because like I think the maximum amount allowable for like a fine is like $10,000 or $20,000 or something like that. But if you
Yeah.
suspend a guy,
Yeah.
you fine him the game check, and his game check is like $57,000, and so it's kind of like a plea deal, right? In like the judge jury like whole court system where it's like, yeah, we're calling it a suspension, but you don't have to serve any more time. It's like he gets time served, but it's like, oh, but you also need to fork over that check because like you did not play at all in that game, and like getting dressed up and getting out there and warming up like does not count, right? And so like, yeah, I mean, he missed the entire game, like that makes sense to me. Two full games missed is probably too many, even though
Mhm,
like it was one of the most ridiculously dumb things I've ever seen. Like I said on my
mhm.
podcast, like I would have preferred that he in the offseason, if he had beef with Dak Prescott, had flown all the way to Dallas, knocked on Dak Prescott's door and spit in his face and then just left. Because at least that's like a personal vendetta that like you just sort out on your own. Like you don't take your team down with you if that were the circumstance, where he's just like, I'm gonna wait all off season and we're gonna get this settled on the field, and I'm just gonna walk up to him and spit on his face. Like, man, like there's a lot of cameras, man. Like you're gonna get sort of figured out here. So no, he is available, and that's really key to this game because both these teams were missing a key player very early on in their respective games, and like it might have had something to do with the fact that one team didn't even win and the other team didn't really come all that close to covering, as you well know, last Thursday.
Absolute insanity. And because I saw the headline saying that he was suspended, I didn't read beyond the headline. Like I did the Twitter
That's
thing, I
right, the
did the
TLDR
ESPN
situation.
headline thing, right? The ESPN headline on the bottom of
Yeah.
the ticker, suspended one game,
Yeah.
but I didn't follow up.
Got to read the fine
And
print.
gotta read the fine print. But that even adds
That's right.
more into me liking the Eagles in this game because their D line
Yeah.
will be intact against Patrick Mahomes, who looked like he was the Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl running for his life, or the Patrick Mahomes like in the gotta have it moments, which normally comes in the playoffs or at the end of the season for
Yeah.
seeding, but not really in game
Yeah.
one of the season. My guy's already running for his life. Your man's Kelsey looked mega
That's big.
washed. Luckily, was schemed open. Hollywood Brown, we were questioning whether he should still get the nickname Hollywood, but he was catching passes. But
Yeah.
if he has to do that much, I don't know if that's a place you want to be if you're the
That's right. That's right.
defending AFC champions from Kansas City, right?
Yeah.
So lots going on in this game, but not a lot going on for the Chiefs. And could we be staring down an 0-2 start for the Chiefs here and having full panic mode? Come on. I don't know. But I do know that I'm laying the points here with the Eagles at -1.5.
Yeah. So I think the Chiefs were an underdog at home to the Bills. I think that was last
Okay.
year, right? Where
And
it
the
was like,
Bills
oh,
won.
and then of course uh,
No?
did the Bills win or
I'm
the
looking it up
Chiefs?
right
Was
now. I'm
that the
looking it
one
up
where
right now.
Travis Kelsey? He's looking it up. We have stats and information on top of this thing. Either way, right? Like, listen, the Chiefs probably won. They won like all of the games last year. So my guess is that the Chiefs did. Or no, wasn't it? There was like an offside, right? When like Xavier Worthy or Rasheed Rice or somebody like lined up offside, and it ruined like a touchdown. Was that last season or the year before? They all blend together because the Chiefs seasons all kind of do blend together, which is what made last week so alarming for Kansas City. Because if there was ever a sign that the roller coaster was coming down on the back end of this whole thing, it's that they actually lost to the Chargers, right? Because they could always rely on playing a close game with the Chargers, but beating the Chargers all throughout.
Mhm.
And so I'm watching that game and I go, Patrick Mahomes is still insanely awesome. I'm reminded of everybody who picked the Chiefs, not us, in the Super Bowl last year. And the only excuse that they had for picking the Chiefs was Patrick Mahomes. And it's like, yeah, because this dude is unreal. The problem is, over the course of 10 years or 8 years or whatever it's been, like the roster has gotten precipitously older and lost obviously some of their best players over the years, right? And you mentioned Travis Kelsey, you nailed it right on the head, right? His big gain was like, it was like, scheming up Will Disley to get open, right? It's like, well, we got to put something together here for my guy to be able to get open because he's not winning stuff one on one. And the times that, on the rare times that he is one on one. And by the way, there's nobody else out there. Once Kelsey, by the way, crushes his own man, Xavier Worthy, which because like of course he did on the first drive, right? It's bad enough to be washed and kind of wandering around out there. It's even worse when you're taking, friendly fire shots on your key teammates. And so we got to find out whether Xavier Worthy's going to play in this game. Like I think that's going to be mission critical because I don't think you can evaluate the Chiefs if he's playing based on a game that he was not playing. Because, like, I'm here to tell you, Xavier Worthy was going to be prominently involved in that, playbook, game plan, etc. Well, you know what? So is Jalen Carter. And so the Eagles have Jalen Carter, and he, for all of the stupidity, at least it wasn't an injury. So we know that he's going to be back, a little lighter in the wallet. He quote unquote played last week for free. I guess the good news for Jalen Carter was like, I didn't do anything, so I guess I didn't deserve any money. I'm sure he's rationally taking this quote unquote suspension well, based on things we know about Jalen Carter and his general attitude and intellect. So,
Yes.
long story short here, right, is like, yes, you never want to be taking the Chiefs like at home as an underdog. Like, it's a very scary proposition. And
So
believe me,
I'm
as
going to
this
stop you
starts to
there. I'm going to
creep
stop you
out,
there because I looked it up. I looked it up.
okay,
I looked it
what do
up.
we got? What do we
So
got?
last year,
Yeah,
the Chiefs were in Buffalo, but the game that we're talking about was two
that's
years
right.
ago, in
2 years
which
ago.
Kadarius Toney robbed them of the great
Kadarius
play.
Toney. That's right.
Yes, he was offside on the crazy play. That was a hook and ladder, essentially. Travis Kelce, remember that play? That would have
That's
been
right.
the dub, but instead it ended up being a loss. Buffalo lost to
I
Buffalo
believe the
at
Bills
home.
were favored in
I
that
believe
game.
the
Yeah,
the
I
Bills were
believe the
favored in
Bills were
that game.
favored.
Yes.
Yeah, so not out of the sort of realm of possibility, but that's kind of the whole point with the Chiefs, right? It's like, yes, the rating never necessarily makes them automatic favorites because they're always kind of rated the third or fourth best team in the league, depending on kind of who's the hot squad elsewhere in the league. And so obviously that hot squad is the Super Bowl defending champions. And again, like, I can't go too deep into last Thursday's game because I'm like, I don't know what they would have looked like defensively with Jalen Carter against the Cowboys because
Yeah.
without him, it looked like the Cowboys were able to do, not whatever they wanted, but probably a lot more than they were going to be able to do if Carter was in the lineup. So the unfortunate part going into this game is that you do have kind of two invalid results that have pretty massive question marks going forward, or at least one does with regards to Worthy's availability. So, I just look at it and I go, it's a bad sign that the Chiefs lost to the Chargers because they never do that. And just from an eye test perspective, like, you're looking at the Chiefs going like, is anybody out there, somebody that you're afraid of? And we talked about East Hollywood Brown needing a directional sign, like he's, a Mac school. Because like, yeah, like, cool, man. Like, I'm glad you're from Hollywood, Florida, but like, change your name as much as you want. But like, I'm going to need a little bit more than just some like, high usage, low volume yardage type flair out of you if you're going to have that nickname. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, put it this way, right? Like, I don't have a side yet in this game. I'm leaning a certain direction, but one of those things that's going to have to be sort of clear here is whether Xavier Worthy is able to play. Certainly didn't look great because his shoulder is hurt, and you're a guy who catches things for a living. I don't know how many positions on the NFL field that you can play without a functional shoulder, but wide receiver doesn't seem like one of them when you're already relatively undersized.
Yeah. Travis Kelce taking Taylor Swift out of the players market, we'll say, and taking his own teammate out of,
That's right.
maybe their team's chances at the NFC West market, all in, a
Right.
couple of weeks time. Shouts to Travis Kelce. But also the weird thing about the Chiefs is the more that I have to see of Juju Smith-Schuster, like being
Mhm.
involved in any way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
it's not a good sign.
Too much juju.
Just not a good sign. Not a good. The only time, right, where a lot of juju is bad, right? Is that a thing? Anyways, I'll move
That's
on
right. Yeah.
as I stop
Bad
making
juju.
these terrible puns. Clearly, too much coffee for me this morning. But we will move on there. As mentioned, I'm on the Eagles, but we move on to more of Sunday's action as we have the Bears taking on the Lions in Detroit. The Lions are 5.5-point favorites. I'm going to try to not to overreact to the Lions' performance in week one. They were in Green Bay. I
Right.
feel like the Packers were feeling themselves. Goff, one of the things you talk about a lot is Goff on the road versus Goff at home. All of those things were getting flipped this week, right? Back at home. And they're facing their former OC, right? Who a lot of talk about
Mhm.
how much are the Lions missing Ben Johnson. Well, we got to see Ben Johnson and Caleb and the Bears, and the script looked good to start the game, right? The script looked good to
That's right.
start.
My man can
Another one of the things you
script.
talk about,
My guy's out
right?
here scripting the hell out of things. Yeah, for sure.
And
Good call.
then, things kind of fell apart, and Caleb looked a lot like the Caleb we saw last year. I mean, really, this for me is going to come down to divisional game. It's more than a field goal. I need to see more from the Lions in terms of how they're reacting to
Okay.
having new coordinators on both sides. So I'm going to
Right.
take the Bears here at plus 5.5, just because I
Hmm.
think it's a lot of
Okay.
points. I see the vision with the Bears. Like I see what it could be if they can just get Caleb to like stay in the pocket, maybe try to be on time, with the drop back and hitting
Right.
a receiver, but he still has happy feet. And like, I don't know if that's ever going to change. No, I can't say that. It's his year 2. But you know what I mean? Like you're still
Well,
seeing the same signs of last year that you're seeing now. And you know that he was able to get away with it in college. We've seen this before. You're able to do things in
mhm.
college that you're not able to do in the NFL. And he's still running around like that. And that's not conducive to an offense, especially an offense like your man's Ben Johnson's trying to implement, where we know is about timing and movement and motion and,
Totally.
scheming guys open. You got to be on time. And that's not Caleb right now.
Yeah, and right, it's like it's the offense that Jared Goff ran last year. And so like there wasn't a ton of like, hey, let's get loose and like start slinging the ball around out of the pocket. And listen, I'm sure Ben Johnson can like work with that, but if the whole point is playbook, right? He's bringing the playbook and he's bringing like the reads and all of these things like to Caleb Williams. It's like then my guy like you need to just run that stuff. Like because the whole improv deal, like people are shouting out places and inanimate objects, and he's supposed to be doing stuff with those. Like that's not what we're doing here. You're not on stage, man. Like this isn't a show. And so you could see, you talk about the scripting, right? It's like, all right, he's in there, and then when it's not there, he just takes off. And I thought he looked relatively more athletic at the start of that game than he did last year. When our problem was hey man, like this isn't college. You're not a better athlete than the other guys out there. You're probably the worst athlete of the guys that are out there, at least, relative to the defense. And so, like, I was kind of impressed from that standpoint because I was like, all right, he's like worked even more on his athleticism. But it's like, that's not really what the test is about. It's like you went in for like a science test and he's like, I've been reading a lot of Shakespeare. And you're like, nah, I don't really think like that's what we're asking you here. Like, we're gonna dissect a frog here, not quote a sonnet. And so he's out there doing all that stuff. And you're like, and by the way, like the accuracy is still not there, and it's just a ton of fastballs, and he was missing dudes that again, you picture him at USC, and there's like a lot of guys that Lincoln Riley has schemed up to be wide open college style. Wide open NFL style is a considerably different wide open, right? We just talked about it with Travis Kelsey. And so I'm looking at this going like, is this going to get fixed or is this going to like get clicked in here ever? Maybe. Is it going to get clicked in here on a short week after you just suffer what honestly was just as embarrassing of a loss as the Ravens loss to the Bills? Because you're watching the Vikings in that first half and going like, this is not working. And the Bears, if they had the quote unquote Ben Johnson offense cooking, should have just had their own 15 to 20 point lead. Right. So I just look at it and I'm just like, okay, the Lions here, like obviously not a great performance against the Packers. But that's why I talked about it before, where it was like, all right, maybe the Packers are just really, really good. And so maybe it's a matter of waiting to Thursday to see just how good the Packers are, or at least another data point. But for me here, I'm going to trust the Lions back at home. Like, I hate to do the like, you and I've joked about like the must-win game concept, but like, you can't go 0-2 in the NFC North, and you can't be out here losing home games to the Bears. And so, if we get the sort of best performance here imaginable from the Lions, it's going to depend what imaginable means. Is it going to be like their best performance last year, which would be like blow them out by 3 touchdowns, because that's what the Lions were capable of last year? I still think the Lions' best performance this version, the 2025 edition, can win this game by a score or two, because again, there's nothing out of the Bears offensively that I was necessarily all that worried about. And I think defensively, once the Vikings kind of opened up the playbook and Kevin O'Connell started to cook a little bit, right? Getting even remotely creative. Obviously, I love the JJ McCarthy designed run in the red zone, like put that directly into my veins. Like once they got going, the Bears defense was kind of like, all right, like we've run out of moves here against a Vikings team that was kind of struggling to get it going. I think the Lions probably come out here with like a house on fire going like, yeah, that sucked last week. And people are like trying to tell us out here on the streets that Penei Sewell can't get it done. It's like, well, they don't have a Micah Parsons on the other side here, right? So like this is the chance for the Lions to kind of prove like, no, 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 we're still in this. We're still in the conversation here. And man, like if they lost this game, or honestly, if this was even close at home against the Bears, I would then be like massive red flagging the Lions going forward. But listen, this is a team that just over the last, what, 2 or 3 years when they've been good, have been covering machines. So it was a little weird to see them not able to cover or even cover a teaser leg last week. So, this is, I'm not going to say it's like the last chance for the Lions here. It's just my expectations are really high for a Lions team. When this line came out, it was Detroit -4.5 over the course of the summer. And now it's
Okay.
5.5, which actually makes it, it's higher than it was over the summer. And that's just what the market thinks of the Bears, right? Where
Yeah.
they're like, oh man, we had high hopes for the Bears. And now it's like, we might have jumped the gun here on the Bears. And so I'm more willing to trust that because, listen, Ben Johnson's going to theoretically know what the Lions like to do. The Lions still have a pretty good roster. The Lions are definitely going to know what Ben Johnson likes to do here, right? So short week, tough turnaround after scraping yourself, off a Soldier Field there, getting run over in the second half by the Vikings and JJ McCarthy. I think that's tough for the Bears. This is not a team that I'm looking to trust until I see that Caleb Williams can actually run this offense and therefore play to the level of expectation that the Bears rating was sort of set at this season, right? Because they're still kind of rated as around an average team. But I don't know what you saw on Monday, man. Like, I'll be honest with you, I don't really think either of those teams looked particularly above average. I didn't think the Bears even looked like an average team. I think it's a little bit, for now, same old when it comes to the Bears. And the Lions handled them pretty easily last year, right up until the point where there was that kind of crazy comeback for the Bears at the end of that Thanksgiving game. But listen, for what, 6 to 7 quarters last year, the Lions were way better than the Bears. And I don't know that much has changed, regardless of that first game in Green Bay for Detroit, which I think we'll agree was a pretty tough matchup.
We have our first swap of week 2.
Yeah.
The switch has been made. The pick has been flipped to the Detroit Lions at -5.5. I'm going to say this much. Your point about it being a short week and then having to travel to Detroit, totally right there with you. And of course, your point as well about just if once, Kevin O'Connell was like, all right, I guess I have to try to let McCarthy do something. Things opened up a lot in that
Once
Bears
he threw the
defense.
pick six, right? It's like, well, I mean, now that we're down, like we might as well. Because when it was a one-score game, it's like, well, we can kind of maybe conservative our way around here to steal this win because the Bears aren't pulling away. But then when he throws the pick six, it's like, well, we can lose by 10 or we can lose by 40. Like, let's just get nuts out here. And it worked because, again, I don't know that the Bears defense is all that great.
Yeah, and once if that's what JJ McCarthy's doing, the Lions at home, yeah, bounce back. You could talk me into that. And also, hey, 5.5 points in the Vegas zone. That always the whole premise of that 4.5, 5.5 is Vegas zone. We don't really know what's going to happen here. So blowout city. Let's go. Yeah. Let's roll. I'm in on that. Let's keep it moving here to a next game, which is the Buffalo Bills on the road against the New York Jets. Jets 7-point home dogs. Now, before I get to my pick here, what a win for the Buffalo Bills on Sunday night. Just incredible. I thought that game was done so many times over. Didn't believe in the comeback. I was like, here's the fake comeback, whatever. Bills fans are leaving. But as you mentioned, Josh Allen did the thing, right? Ed Oliver did the thing for their defense. So much going on. Crazy, crazy game. But I got to say, I was just as impressed, if not more impressed by the Jets. And I know the Jets lost, but I was surprised. Justin Fields looked more than functional. He looked pretty good. Like they were moving the ball against the Steelers and like he was feeling himself. He was rushing. He was throwing. There's a lot going on in that Jets offense that threw me off guard. I can't lie. So I look at this here, divisional game at home, you're getting more than a field goal. You're getting a touchdown.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the Jets here at +7 points at home against the Bills team that, showed me that if you have a solid running game, you can give them some problems. So I'm on the Jets here at +7.
That's right. And think about it, right? Like It's not easy to score 30 points in an NFL football game, right? And it's not, and who knows? Maybe the Steelers defense is just not good. That would be kind of a twist, right? Based off of sort of history. And they go and
But
they plug a
it's
bunch
not
of holes
like
with
Justin
veterans and
Fields. It's not like we've seen Justin Fields be good against any defense, really. Right?
no, you're right, which is my concern about maybe the Steelers defense. Or like, maybe you just eventually kind of find the right spot. And so, if you go back to that in the post game with Aaron Rodgers talking about like good to beat anybody, associated with the Jets organization, like I mean, I guess like Aaron Glenn, is is culpable in any of this, but like I don't think so. I think Aaron Glenn's sitting back there going like, what did I do, man? Like I just got the job and like this is clearly not working out from like in a multitude of ways. Like why would I keep Aaron Rodgers, out here? And like meanwhile like they gave this guy a job when like the Packers were happy to get rid of him, and it's all just very disingenuous and ungrateful, and all of that isn't remotely surprising from Aaron Rodgers, but like he, got to work on the Jets defense just as much as Justin Fields got to work on theirs. For the Bills, it's a brutal spot. You and I talk about the jump and hug game, right? One of our old staples, as you mentioned, over the last 5+ years, is like you have the jump and hug game, and then the next week, like you got to get back up. And with some of these really marquee matchups from last week, we talked about like Detroit and Green Bay, and even Washington and New York to an extent, right? It's a divisional matchup, but like you plan for that game over and over and over again. And like, again, the Bills were getting blown out in that game. And that's what made it so annoying that they lost that game, because it was never really, even when they like decided to just throw an extra second on the clock at the end of the first half to give the Bills an extra field goal there to kind of like quote unquote keep them in it, which, now looking back on it is even more infuriating. Like it never really felt like that the Bills were able to hang with the Ravens right up until like they did. And it felt a lot like the game that you and I referenced in handicapping that game, which was the Bills Ravens matchup from last year, where the Ravens just ran right through the Bills. And so now the Bills have to go on a road. It's not a short week per se, but of course, like by the time you even realize you have a game this week, like it might feel like a short week for the Bills. And you got to go on the road. And of course, this early in the season, we're going to get caught up in branding, right? Like we still think of the Jets as the Jets, and maybe that ends up being, coming to fruition. And I was the same way before the season. I was like, are we familiar at all with the Jets' work? Are we familiar at all with Justin Fields' work? Like, why would we think that all of a sudden this was going to be good? And it's like, yeah, Brees Hall all of a sudden, like able to find some room because Justin Fields is a mobile quarterback. It's exactly what the Bills just faced last week, which like would be fine because you'd be like, oh, they just game plan for it. And it's like, yeah, or they just had no answer for Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry outside of Henry fumbling in that moment. And so I just look at it and I go like, it's the same kind of offense, at least from like a matchup standpoint, and the things you have to worry about if you're the Buffalo Bills when you've got these, the Bills' best thing on defense is that they have a handful of pass rushers. Well, like if Justin Fields isn't going to drop back, straight drop back pass without there at least being some threat to run, play action pass, rollouts, things of that nature, I don't know that it's nothing to say like, oh, the Bills can't stop the Jets. It's more like I don't know why the Jets couldn't just keep scoring and being able to hang in with the Bills in this game. And like we've seen other sleepy scenarios where the Bills go to the Jets and have a bit of a rough go of it, even when it was the Aaron Rodgers edition of the Jets or even the post Aaron Rodgers. Like remember when Aaron Rodgers like snapped his Achilles, right? Like the Jets won that game against the Buffalo Bills with I forget who even came in as a backup quarterback, but it was not somebody that like we thought was any good. Yeah, speaking of going back on trivia on that one. So, even at the best of the time of times here, the Bills are going to sort of like struggle in this spot. Doesn't mean they necessarily lose outright. Like, we'll see. We may take a dabble in that from a theoretical standpoint. But at 7 points, available at DraftKings, I think it's -115 for the Jets at +7. Certainly something worth locking here because they can see this kind of coming off the number. Some places is available at 6.5. So you're going to get your Jets +7 sort of as soon as you possibly can.
Yeah, I like that number. I like that number a lot. Rolling with the Jets at least for one more week. We'll see what Justin Fields has in store when he's playing against a team that he didn't used to play against. We'll see if that revenge week
That's right.
thing, for Aaron Rodgers
Well,
and
that's
Justin Fields,
it.
how much
Yeah.
that plays into it as well, right? So we shall see. Let's move on though to the Jags at the Bengals. Bengals at home, 3.5-point favorites, despite the fact they had 7 yards in the second half. I don't even know if that's possible. Like, how is that possible?
Bro.
But it can't be possible that the Bengals offense is actually that bad, right? But the Browns almost won that game. If they had a kicker, the Browns probably win that game, right? So who knows what to make of it? No, go on. What were you going to say?
No, I'm saying that they were the better team. The Browns were the better team in that game. Like, listen, there's a lot of games going on, right? And I know people get locked into red zone, and you're probably like, I don't know how the red zone treats it, right? Where it's like, let's check in on the Browns game. Oh, they missed a field goal. Oh, Joe Flacco throws an interception. Neither of those are Joe Flacco's fault. We'll talk about this more when we get to the Browns. The Browns, I watched every minute of that game. The Browns are a better team than the Bengals were last week.
Yeah, the pass rush was insane. Joe Flacco was running for his life. Yeah, it was a crazy
Joe Burrow.
game. Joe Burrow. Who did I say? Joe Flacco?
You said Flacco. A couple of Joes involved.
Bunch
Joe
of Joes.
Flacco, if he ran for his life, you wouldn't notice because it would still look like he was standing there. You'd be like, he's running for his life. It's like, has he moved?
Yes, Joe Burrow running from his life.
Right.
I should have just said Myles Garrett chasing around someone running for their life, right? Chasing around the Joe running for his life. But
Myles Garrett almost sacked Joe Flacco at one point. That's how good Myles Garrett was. Sorry to interrupt you there. Like, he was unreal in that game. Unreal.
He was.
Like, I was worried for my own safety just by watching Myles Garrett. I was like, this guy might come out of the screen and hit me. Like, yeah, I mean, he's still available. I think at 600 or plus 600 for Defensive Player of the Year. Go get it because he's winning the DPOY. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't even know if I've seen that where he almost had 3 straight sacks, like on 3 consecutive plays. Like, Burrow had to hop out of the end zone to avoid like the 3rd straight sack by Myles Garrett, with the 3rd being a safety. Just might have been like the internet might have exploded if that actually happened.
I know.
But that's just, what Joe Burrow was facing last week. So he's not facing that this week. He's facing the Jags. And that's probably why I'm on the Bengals at -3.5. I don't know how much I like it per se, but just not having to see Myles Garrett alone is like, okay, feeling a little more comfortable there. I don't know here. This is a tough one. And I will say, in me putting together the bets this week, there's a lot of 3.5 lines and a lot of 5.5 lines. And I can't lie to you. At one point, I was almost like, do I just take the points in every single game that's either 3.5 and 5.5?
Board.
Just forget everything else and just blindly take the points for all of these games and just trust that, like, hey, most of them are going to cover the point spread. Do you know what I mean? I'm on Cincy here, but what I'm saying is I could be easily swayed here. The problem is, obviously, the Jags. I'm going to need some selling here on the Jags.
Well, it's tough, right? Because we talked about the idea of like Philly and Kansas City kind of having invalid statistical games and like box score and all that kind of stuff. Like, when you just stop the game for 2 hours, right in the middle of it, it's really hard for me to be like, I'm going to take what happened in that game and then sort of like rely on that information, because like that's such a weird thing that, and I don't know if like the home team's always sort of like favored in that circumstance. I mean, we saw like Dallas and Philly going up and down the field on each other on Thursday, and then it was like, sorry, there's actually going to be like an hour-long break in this game, and then they come back and like nobody can score. And so like that's one way that things got weird off of a break, and like the people who had the over in that game were just like rattled beyond belief, and like I get it. And then so Jacksonville and Carolina, like they do the same thing. Or I was like, I kept flipping back and being like, is this game ever going to like? Are we sure Florida is still there? Like how is this game taking so long? Like I was under the impression that Florida Storms, like they were relatively quick and we get right back to this. And so, maybe Carolina is just back to stinking, and like we had really high hopes because I don't even know if we had high hopes. We had hopes that Carolina was going to do the thing, be the team that they were in the last 8 games last year, and they had some injury issues that were kind of relatively unforeseen, right? Like they were missing like Ikwanu, the offensive tackle, and there were some rough clips from our guy Bryce Young. So, like how much are you going to take from that? I guess if we just pretended that game didn't exist, Which honestly, the betting market is kind of treating it that way to an extent here. Like I'm looking, I mean, the summer line was -5.5 for Cincinnati.
Okay.
You just talked about it, right? 5.5, 3.5. Like these are all kinds of in the middle. And by the way, like there are so many 3.5s and 5.5s that like if we don't have some money line upsets of like at least a decent amount here, I'm gonna be so rattled by this
Yeah.
league. Like some of
Yeah.
these upsets have to come home. I don't know if we're gonna get them. I don't know if we're gonna get them all, or we can get some of them or whatever. But like there has to be some to choose from because there was nothing to choose from last week. I think on Sunday the biggest upset was what the 2.5 point dog that the Raiders were, and of course the Chiefs on Friday. So like there are enough sort of chunkier spreads here and bigger money lines that it's like, all right, like somebody's got to do something from an underdog perspective. Based on this Bengals defense, like I'm going to give Joe Flacco some credit here for like playing really well and kind of taking a lot of the checkdowns and finding some guys that maybe not a lot of people have heard of. You know, the Dylan Sampsons, the Harold Phantoms, right? Some of the rookie guys, which is making me like the Browns a lot more. That they do have this influx of weaponry, if you will. You know, the whole thing here, like all we were
Bengals
told
more.
all season, all preseason was no, the Browns more sort of in general, and liking the
Oh, I
Bengals
got you.
less
I'm with you. I'm
because
with you. I'm
like
with you. I'm with
I
you.
don't
Yeah,
think
yeah,
the
yeah,
Bengals,
yeah.
yeah, no, the Bengals defense for me is still a question mark. And if this whole thing this offseason was Liam Cohen, Trevor Lawrence, like we're gonna get going on the offense, and like, yeah, I'm not necessarily buying all into that. But when you're going to start giving me a field goal, you know, and the hook here, now I'm starting to go like, all right, like that's a different deal than like giving a field goal and a hook, even against Carolina last week, right? Like a different circumstance. You and I kind of talk about all that, you know, that all the time. So I don't know that the Bengals, you know, listen, their focus was all offseason was to like start hot, make sure that we play well. And yeah, they got away with the win. You mentioned the kicker who like can't even spell Schmidt correctly. You know, a lot of consonants in that man's name. Too many, some are saying. Yeah, I just look at it and go like, yeah, if you were trying so hard to start well and you couldn't do it, I don't know that, like, again, I don't know that a lot of that stuff's getting fixed in week 2. And I'm not willing to lay the points with the Bengals until I see that A, the offense is flat out cooking, B, the defense is able to be better than, like, maybe one of the worst in the league, which was not proven last week, that's for sure. And, you know, again, if we're getting points, then I'm going to give the Liam Cohen thing, like, a little chance here, I think.
This is tough. I'm gonna say you almost had me. You almost had me.
Oh,
I'm gonna
whoa.
ride with Joe Burr and hope that him and Jamar Chase cannot have back to back like just horrible no-show games. And I can't even, and I
Yeah,
know
I'm
it's
sure
not
they'll
their
be fine.
fault. It's not, but
Mhm.
it's just a tough one here. It's a very tough one. You almost had me. It's very good, but we
Yeah.
shall see
Yeah.
how this game plays out because there's a lot of factors. And your point is so good about how teams react coming out of a long, like weather
So
stoppage.
random.
Like it's
Yeah.
so random. You don't know what each team's doing in the locker room, what coaches are doing, how the coaches are handling it. Are they, what's it's the NHL overtimes where they got like the oranges coming out to the room and they're like bringing pizzas
That's
and
right.
stuff. Like
If
who
you're the
knows
home
what's going
team, do you
on,
have yeah? If you're the home
right?
team, do you have better access to citrus? Right? Is like your citrus pipeline a little bit better if you're the home team? You know, is Liam Cohen, who was just in Tampa last year, like I don't remember what what their break, what their weather break record, or if they had any in Tampa last year. Like, is he used to this stuff?
Uh,
Like, does he
who
have all
knows?
of the T's crossed and the I's dotted and the oranges ready to go? Like, who knows, man? So that's the thing. Like, that's tough to sort of see. But if we're going to go off of this idea that the Jags are ready to like have an quote unquote offensive like explosion. Yeah, it didn't really happen last week, but like you're not telling me that it couldn't this
Yeah,
week.
exactly.
Again, like Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow could have a great game. Didn't all of their great games didn't help them make the playoffs last year, right? And again, they could
Oh,
win this game with an Evan McPherson, field goal at the end, and like Jacksonville would cover. So
yep. They
or
do
not.
have a kicker, unlike some teams, which I'm not bitter about at all, but we'll get there.
Well, who knows? Who knows who's got a kicker and who doesn't? You know.
Was talking about my Niners, but we'll get there. We
Oh,
will move
your
on
boy,
to the
yeah.
Giants
Let's
and the
go.
Cowboys. Giants on the
I want to go
road,
to the
Cowboys
Niners right now.
hosting. Cowboys are 5.5-point home favorites. And the Cowboys
Yeah.
offense looked solid against the Eagles defense, but is that the real Eagles defense? We asked that question earlier. We will have to wait to find out this Sunday for sure. But I do know the Giants defense looked really good, right? The Giants pass rush was pretty good. It was, I mean, Russ did his part, of course, to make the offense struggle. But I mean, the Giants defense at least was all right. Can Russ do anything? You know, can the Cowboys keep Dak clean? There's so many questions here. The reason I'm on the Giants in the plus 5.5 points, though, is because I'm trusting in the Giants defense to, you know, make Dak have to work a little more here on offense. And I feel like at some point Daboll has to make a move here off of Russ because his job is on the line and you can't just have Russ sitting there doing nothing. And I don't know if that's coming in week 2, but it might. So
yeah,
I'm on the Giants plus 5.5.
Yeah. So listen, the nation will be on the edge of its seat to find out whether Russell Wilson will get a second start, or whether it'll be Jackson Dart. Speaking of Shakespeare soliloquies. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Like the nation, we're all going to be worried about Wilson Dart, like who's going to play, right? And first of all, again, you might be listening to this and be like, yeah, they actually just announced Jackson Dart. And so it's relatively invalid what I'm about to say. I guess from like a handicapping perspective on that decision, I would find it a little odd that you would start the season with Russell Wilson and then you would give him one game on the road, again, against, in NFL terms, right, the team that went to the NFC Championship game last year.
Facts.
And then you would just be like, nope, you're out. Like, you know, if it was going to be that quick, I feel like, hey, why don't you just go with Dart right off the bat? That way you can spend the entire offseason or that period between the last preseason game and the first actual NFL game, which like feels like it's 100 years because of just the way that the schedule sort of is now. So you're gonna then go, all right, we're back-to-back road games, so like who knows what we're gonna get out of our team this early in the season. And now is the time to start Jackson Dart, where like you could give Russell Wilson another chance. If it's not good, then you go to Jackson Dart at home on Sunday night next week against the Chiefs. Now, listen, you look at the Giants schedule, there are no good times to start Jackson Dart, and if there is, it's not really anytime soon. So again, maybe if the plan was, you know, we're looking through, I was just kind of quickly looking at the Giants. Yeah, it's Chargers at home in week 4. That's not really a real party. And then it's they're hosting a team, or they have a bye week in week 5. I'm trying to do this super quickly. I think they might have the bye week in week 5. So again, like if you were the coaching staff and you saw that and you were like, yeah, because they play on Thursday night against Philly in week 6, it's like, when's the right time for Dart, right? And it's like, again, like maybe it is after that bye week, maybe it's a home game, right? I don't think it's second game of the year on the road. So you are probably going to get Russell Wilson. I say all of the quarterback stuff to say, or to not say, the key part of all of this, which for me has always been, if Andrew Thomas does not play the left tackle for the Giants, then I don't want to be involved in the Giants, right? And that doesn't matter whether Daniel Jones is the quarterback, Tommy DeVito is the quarterback, Russell Wilson's the quarterback, Jameis Winston's the quarterback, Jackson Dart's the quarterback.
Phil Simms.
Me or you are the quarterback. Yeah, Phil Simms is the quarterback, me or you is the quarterback. So, like, that's the one that I'm going to be most interested in this week from like an injury type of a deal here, right? Like, can Andrew Thomas play in this game? Because then you go, obviously, Giants defense, you referenced it, right? And it's like the sucky part about all of this, I can't remember last time I used the word sucky, is that like the Giants were really good defensively and with that pass rush. And like all I got them was, you know, kind of blown out by the end of that game. And I don't know what we'll see again because of the invalidation of the Jalen Carter thing. And that's another sort of frustrating element. Why this stuff is hard enough, but it's hard to figure out like what kind of offensive line the Cowboys are working with when they didn't have to deal with like the key, by far the key element of the Eagles defensive line. Because yeah, like the Cowboys have Tylers as far as the eye can see, and everybody on that offensive line is a first round pick. And so, like, yeah, there might be some optimism there. But you and I fundamentally talked about the idea of, like, when Dak Prescott plays for the Cowboys, they are an above-average team. That is just always how it has been. And so last week they were rated as a below average team as that line went to 8.5. And so I don't know whether the Eagles cover because Jalen Carter plays and maybe there's an extra play or two that gets made or whatever. And everyone you can talk yourself into that all you want. But the reality is now that we've seen the Cowboys for one game, the market has then now moved them up into at least league average. I think there's still some room here for the Cowboys based on, again, like, yeah, they lost the game. So people are still going to kind of be down on the Cowboys. This team might be, again, the way that they have been with Dak Prescott when he's healthy. That is to say, pretty good. And pretty good is probably enough to beat the Giants with Russell Wilson or with Jackson Dart on the road in his first start, if that ends up being the case. And they're especially good enough to be able to rush the Giants if Andrew Thomas is unable to play. And it's always this weird thing, right? When a guy misses the first week of the season, like I was telling my wife, she's like, wait a minute, this guy's hurt? Like, how did he get hurt? As if he's just been like in a rocking chair all summer. It's like, well, no, like they do stuff like during training camp. Like it's pretty arduous. So like it is a little weird that like, oh yeah, he can't play in week one, and then if he can play in week two, it's like, man, he got that healthy that quick. So again, like that's what I'm waiting to see here. But like, how many more times do I have to get kind of suckered into the Russell Wilson experience? And as much as we're told like Jackson Dart looked good in the preseason, very cool, man, very cool. Still the preseason. So yeah, there's a bunch of different moving pieces here. The Cowboys are back to the rating where they probably should be. The Giants certainly got downgraded, and that's always kind of a scary thing, right? Because fundamentally, if we see a team get downgraded to where we think kind of their like low end, their floor is, and the Cowboys have burst kind of through the ceiling, at least what the market was thinking of, not historically, then that's usually a reason to bet on the underdog. And so I totally get that. But just, again, fundamentally, it's like I can't do any more Russell Wilsoning. I can't do any more of the Giants offensive line when their starting left tackle is out. I can't do any of those things.
I will say a pick has been changed again, and the another factor for me here was
Wow.
also I just thought the Cowboys defense held up better against the Eagles than I thought a lot of people might have been giving them credit for. Do you know what I mean? Like the Eagles
Sure.
offense is really good.
Yeah.
I think the Cowboys
Yeah.
defense did like an okay job. Like they didn't get caved in.
I thought the secondary was impressive, right? The secondary was impressive for the Cowboys. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
That's
Russ
going to
isn't
come in
able to
handy
throw
against the league
anyways.
neighbor.
So, right?
Totally.
Russ isn't able to throw anyways. So it's like, okay. Cowboys at home, also a different team as well. I think that is a team that likes the confines of playing at home. I thought they got a lot more from the running game as well than I thought they were going to get. So, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talked into that one there. Cowboys -5.5. That is the pick there. We'll keep it going with another 5.5 line. You got the Rams at the Titans. Rams, 5.5-point road favorites. That's a lot of points. The Rams and Matt Stafford look good, as we mentioned in the preseason and, in our preseason preview in week one. Matt Stafford's healthy. Of course, they look like world beaters. They look great. And they did in week one. But this is still too many points for me on the road to lay with this team, especially against Cam Ward, who I think looked pretty good against a Broncos defense that is really good. We know that, right? We know the Broncos defense is good.
Yeah.
They got a good secondary, all of that. And I think Cam Ward was okay. Like he was okay. And now you're giving me Cam Ward at home with the Titans team, and you're getting 5.5 points. That's a lot of points. I'm going to take the 5.5 points at home based off the principles. Titans plus 5.5.
So yeah, the Titans game again, like I was super locked into it and I didn't want to be, right? I was dragged into 60 minutes of Titans and Broncos football because of how close that game was. And yeah, so yeah, it's funny, right? Because like you'll see, I think there's a stat rolling around. There was like Titans offense, like 130 yards. Titans penalties, 130 yards. And I was like, neither of those numbers are good, right?
No,
like, one is way too high and the other is way too low. Yeah. But the thing about Cam Ward is he always makes you feel like the next throw could go 75 yards. Because he's throwing these seeds up the seam that are so close to getting like completed, like in stride, where you're just going to be like, well, safety's not going to be able to like, make the stop on this. And like, frankly, Titans guys were dropping the ball.
Yep.
Obviously you have Surtain, who's locked on Calvin Ridley. I think that had Ridley shook to the point where like there were opportunities for Ridley to catch the ball in the second half, and he was so kind of like out of the game that really kind of mattered to him, and he might drop a couple of balls because of that. Obviously you go on the road, like, yeah, there's going to be some penalty issues potentially, right? And so if you tighten up, pardon the pun, the penalty deal, you complete a couple of these passes at home because you don't have to deal with the Broncos defense that was in mid-season form. I thought the offensive line actually held up pretty well. They ended up losing Lathan midway through the game, so we got to keep an eye on like what the deal is with that, right? Because that's a key member, obviously, of their offensive line, especially when you're going against the Broncos defense that was rushing the passer. And again, they got to the point because the Titans couldn't run the ball very well. They would find themselves in second and long. They'd take a penalty. They'd find themselves in second or third and long. And then the Broncos are going to be able to tee off. And then Ward would just have to go back and try to hit one of these seam passes. And again, like I said, they were just missing. But the defense was really good. And listen, a lot of people are going to trash Bo Nix because he was not very good in this game. But like the Titans defense had something to do with that.
Yeah.
So flip to the Rams here coming to town, right? And we have, and this is one of these deals, and I can't believe we've only kind of talked about it just, so far, is you can tell me about week 2 overreaction and this, that, or whatever. To me, week 2, doing the home road thing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the Rams go from home to road and the Titans go from road to home, and not just road to home, like mile high to home. And the Rams, have, that same sort of flip where it goes. I don't really think that the Rams were like that great on offense. You mentioned Matthew Stafford playing. To me, it was more about the Rams defense, right? Like Stafford was all right. The offense did kind of just enough. But to me, it was about the defense because you and I talked about this, right? The Houston Texans revamped offensive line. It was really bad last year, so they revamped it. And does that mean it's going to be good? Not necessarily, right? And so the Rams were able to kind of save that game in a lot of ways because of what they were able to do. I think the Titans with Jeffrey Simmons, who was causing his own disturbance in Denver last week, I think the Titans are going to be able to like cause some problems here. And so, for me, think that there's just enough kind of plays that the Titans are going to be able to make here that are going to make them kind of a live underdog. And I realize, week 2, we're already at a point where I'm going against what I said with regards to like, if Matthew Stafford plays, like we need to be taking the Rams. Not by 5.5 points on the road, where the setup is a lot better for sort of undervalued Titans kind of playing a lot better this week, where they can, hopefully the offensive line can hold up against the Rams defense, but that, the defense themselves is going to kind of keep this game in a very similar game to last week where it's low scoring, and maybe in this case, Matthew Stafford, there's a fumble or a turnover or something like that, right? Because Matthew Stafford is certainly capable of either of those things. And that might be the thing in a close game that maybe turns this in the favor of the Titans. The box score doesn't really add up, but just watching the Titans, I did just kind of have this fear that like the Titans, if they can just kind of get it clicked here, could be a problem for our survivor entry. And, they couldn't quite do it last week, but I think they might be able to do it this week.
Yeah, this one will be super interesting game for sure. Is Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua. It's almost like, how long can the Rams keep both of those guys healthy? Because it almost seems like every game Puka's banged up because he's catching everything over the middle. Like he has no fear at all.
Hits. Totally.
Oh yeah, right. So that's super interesting there. We shall see for sure. We move on from that NFC West team to another NFC West team, as in the San Francisco 49ers, who were in 4.5-point road favorites in New Orleans against my guy, Spencer Rattler and the Saints. And I got to be honest, I said I was going to give Spencer Rattler credit if he was functional. And I think he was functional. I watched a bit of that game. He was functional. Yes. He wasn't as bad as he was last year. He showed some improvements. They had a chance to win that game, right? Fair enough.
Yep.
But as we go to the Niners here, and I'm going to lay the points with the Niners, but we'll get there. But the Niners, Brock Purdy, that last TD, I don't know, like on its own, he's just throwing that up. But within the context of that game, he has to just force in plays because he has no kicker. The kicker he is rolling with was 12 for their last 23 in field goal attempts. That's an insane stat.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any
I
sense. I
could
feel like you
not
could get someone.
believe it.
You could get
I couldn't
someone
believe
from
when I
U
saw it.
Sports. U Sports. Put
Yeah,
them
man.
in the
U
NFL.
Sports, Canada.
Yes. And I feel like they could go 12 for 23 in the NFL. So Brock Purdy, it's 4-down territory. You got no kicker. George Kittle's out. Jennings is out. Ayuk, you know my stance on him. Screw him. Not even relying on him anyways. And the box is stacked versus Christian McCaffrey, who's just running into a stacked defense every single time. Great pickup, Brian Robinson Jr. I like that. I like that pickup by the Niners. A little sneaky move. I like that. But what else do you want from Brock Purdy? Just throwing it up to Tonjes, a dude I didn't even know was on the team before the game starts. Like, who is that guy? But anyways, Niners win. This week, run the ball. You have a full week to come up with whatever scheme and run game that Shanahan can pull out of his back pocket. And more importantly, the reason why I'm on the Niners laying the 4.5 points is that Niners defense against Spencer Rattler. Now, you might be improved, but Fred Warner and them boys, woo, seeing Robert Saleh jumping up and down on the sidelines again in his Niners colors, I was like,
right. you were having
feeling
flashbacks.
Good, feeling good.
Happier time.
Feeling good again. Give me the Niners minus 4.5 on the road in New Orleans. Let's go.
Yeah, so it's funny, right? So this opens at 7. That's where it was over the course of the summertime. Then Monday, later in the afternoon, word on the street comes out. Your boy Shefty, beep 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 beep, like breaking news. Not just George Kittle, but also Brock Purdy potentially out for this game. At which point, everybody goes, "Wait a second, who's the backup quarterback?" I was going to say de jour, but it's DNA for, a little French for everybody, for the folks in New Orleans. And it's Mac Jones, right? And you're like, oh boy, here we go, right? And so like the NFL is loaded with quarterbacks that we all go, okay, fine, right? Because the reason somebody's a backup quarterback is probably, especially if we know their name, it's because they kind of flunked out when they had an opportunity to be a starting quarterback. Well, listen, the whole deal in New England towards the end there, when Mac Jones had to be sort of thrust into a role of quote-unquote franchise quarterback, was not a very good scene. Then he goes and gets to play last year a little bit once Trevor Lawrence gets kind of booted out. And he actually had some pretty good games in there, right? Like there was a game against the Jets that was kind of like a shootout. I'm not going to get deep into the stats here with Mac Jones here. But like the interesting thing is, as you know, as a 49ers fan, going back to the Trey Lance fiasco of the draft of 2000 and whatever it was, is that like the murmurs, the rumors, etc., were that like, your boy Shanny was like pretty into Mac Jones. Now, again, we'll never know whether that was true or not, but it's kind of a hint that it was true that Mac Jones is on the team right now. Right?
And Trey Lance is not.
If that was all... That's right. If it was all just BS subterfuge and it's like, oh, we never really liked Mac Jones at any point, like there's a plethora of backup quarterbacks that the 49ers could employ this season, but it seems that they went out of their way to hire Mac Jones to be that backup quarterback. And so at least that has me kind of perking up and going like, well, that's interesting. And so I then go back to, we talked about it last week, right? When Sam Darnold was the backup quarterback of the 49ers, going like, I wonder what it would look like if Sam Darnold got to play in sort of meaningful type of a role here. It's so weird because it's the NFL and like, obviously, you have to pay Brock Purdy and there's a long-term element to that. And you're not going to be like, screw it, we're going to go with Mac Jones instead. For one game and one game only, like, I don't know that there's that much of a difference between Brock Purdy and Mac Jones, especially against a pretty vulnerable team in the New Orleans Saints. And so I kind of like, listen, go back and look at the box score between the Saints and the Cardinals. Like the Saints had the better numbers than the Cardinals did. I think that might be more of an indictment of the Cardinals. And like, oh, shocker, the Cardinals might be disappointing this year. Like, can't believe it. That never happens. This number coming down to 4.5, like that's a pretty big move off of -7, right? -7 to -4.5, where like, as much as George Kittle, speaking of guys who got a contract, It's always awkward because it's like, hey man, like, yeah, Kittle means something to the team and this, that, or whatever, but does he mean anything to the point spread? I don't really think that he does. That we don't really have any evidence over the years of when Kittle misses games. Like, oh, the point spread has moved because George Kittle's not able to play, and whether that's because they have Tonjus or some other random that I've never heard of before. I just go like, yeah, man. Like, it's funny. I would like the Saints at +7 if Brock Purdy had played, because again, I think the market is too sour on the Saints. But moving the 49ers, let's put it this way, right? They were what we talked about last week. They were what, the fourth highest rated team, maybe the fifth highest rated team, because obviously, they're road favorites against Seattle. They are like 11-win team, and that will put them kind of in the high 60s from like a rating perspective. Making them -4.5, even on the road against the Saints, puts them at 51 out of 100.
Yeah.
Calling the 49ers a dead, average team. And so, maybe that's too much of an overreaction in my estimation, because the Saints got a big bump up, despite the fact that they lost and did not cover. I would kind of have a problem with that necessarily, right? Like, I kind of don't love where the Saints are rated. I think they should be rated a little bit higher than this, but like, I know the 49ers shouldn't be a 51 out of 100, an average team here. I think they're better than that. I think there's enough of an infrastructure here that the 49ers, on a value basis, just based on those numbers, based on that rating concept, and just our general hunch that like Mac Jones, I think everybody thinks a pretty bright guy, had, tons of time to sort of play in the preseason and in scrimmages and all of that kind of thing. I think he's able to kind of step in here in the short term and be able to lead the 49ers to a win against the Saints. And therefore, I'm not going to just sort of give the Saints here 4.5 points. I'm going to take those 4.5 points with the 49ers.
Yeah, super interesting one there. And Mac Jones, I mean, as you mentioned, where I stand on Brock Purdy. I think he's all right. I think he's solid, but I'm more of a believer in Shanahan. And Shanahan, kind of like Kevin O'Connell, it's like, it's about a system. Give me a guy that can follow the system and I will figure it out, type thing, and McCaffrey seemed to be okay. I mean, he was doing all that he could. He was trying. So I think with a week to figure out, okay, what do we do now without Kittle? What can we do with Tonjes instead of Kittle? Do you know what I mean? Like, you're figuring out what you can do with this receiving core. Shouts to my guy Ricky, pretty Ricky, doing work. We need him. We need him now.
People underrate Ricky Pearsall. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, listen, we don't need to get into why, but like, this is a first round wide receiver. And everybody just thinks like he's like some stray off the street.
No, I'm with it. Like, people forget as well. Like, he got shot at the start of last season, right? Like,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So like, maybe give my guy some time to figure some things out. Get back to normal.
I had never seen the visual. I saw the video. I think it was maybe on the pregame show on ESPN on Monday Night Football. I'd never seen the visual of him literally like holding his like chest getting into an ambulance before. I had never seen that. I mean, listen, you hear about somebody. Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I didn't realize we were on this whole deal like with a camera and stuff. Like, okay, let's,
crazy stuff.
Yeah,
but
I like him.
My point to that is like, that's a dude that's ready, right? Like he's ready to ball, right?
Yeah.
Been through some stuff.
Yeah,
I think like I'm a ride with that guy. Instead, I was gonna take another shot at Ayuk, but you know what? I'm gonna be more mature and just move on to the next game. The Browns at the Ravens. Ravens at home, 11.5 point favorites. I'm going to say that again. The Ravens are 11.5 point favorites at home to the Cleveland Browns. I'm just going to say way too many points here for me. If we remember back to last season, I'm pretty sure the Browns play the Ravens tough, no matter who the quarterback was, even, and like Deshaun just was Deshaun, but, getting someone functional again, Mr. Joe Flacco. Like, was it the Ravens? It was the Ravens that Jameis won, right? Was that against the Ravens last year? Or was that the Bengals? In the snow?
2 years ago.
Sorry, my bad. I'm sorry. I'm doing the same thing.
No, that was the
trying
Steelers.
To put us on the spot. That was the Steelers. You're right. It was.
That was the Steelers.
Bing, 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 bing. You are correct. But my point remains here. 11.5 points, way too much. Flacco, might not win the game, but I think he'll sling the rock enough to keep it close-ish. The pass rush, Myles Garrett, Won't win the game, but I think they could, keep the game close-ish. Bounce back potential here for the Ravens, but a divisional game, 11 points is a little too much for me, a team that plays them tough. And also the Ravens at that 1 p.m. Sunday when they're big favorites, we've seen this movie before where they might not get as up for this game as they do for other games. And again, that's not saying they're going to lose, but has me weary of trying to take them to cover big spreads. So with that, I'm on the Browns plus 11 and a half.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just put it this way, right? Summer line for this is Baltimore minus 12.5. And so again, you look at this game, you go, all right, well, you're moving from 12.5 to 11.5, which is like not a move at all. Is that enough for how quote unquote good the Browns looked last week? I don't think so. Right. And so, the Ravens looked awesome for 55 minutes in that game. You can tell me, they lost that game, so like they're going to be out for blood, and they're certainly capable of winning by 2 scores against an inferior team at home. And like all of that is super true. But like that game, win or lose, is going to take a lot out of you potentially. Right. And this isn't, as we always kind of talk about, right? Like Lamar in prime time. He's got a Monday nighter the following week against Detroit. I believe that's in Detroit. Or no, that's hosting Detroit. This does kind of feel like a little bit of a sleepy spot. Obviously, them losing that game last week is going to have a little bit more of their attention this week. But again, the market thinks that the Browns are god awful. And again, you can say I'm an idiot here. I watched every second of that game. I was going, you know what? This Browns team is functional. And in the NFL, if you're getting 11.5 points, I don't care who you're playing, and you're functional, I think you're going to cover 55% of the time, maybe more. And so, like, that's what all of this stuff comes down to, right? Like, which is the 55% side and which is the 45% side when it comes to point spreads. And so at 11.5, again, with a quarterback, listen, if it's Dylan Gabriel, if it's one of these, Shador, whatever, like that's got blowout written all over it. And the way I sort of put this, like Joe Flacco might get hurt in the first play and we might just be hooped. But as long as Joe Flacco is playing for this Browns team and they are rated in the mid-30s, which is the key here, right? They are rated as a 35, 36 out of 100. Well, listen, man, if you don't think that they're at least closer to average, then you've got some mega question marks about the Cincinnati Bengals, right?
Yeah.
Because the only way that game is close and that the Browns were the better team, I assert, in that game is if the Bengals are bad. And so as long as you're still going to tell me, which the market is still telling me by having them as 3.5-point favorites against the Jaguars, that the Bengals are still a playoff contender, that they are an above average team, then I'm sorry, the Browns rating has to go up more than going from 12.5 to 11.5 in this game. So like, I think this line should probably be closer. Listen, it's not gonna be 8.5 or anything crazy like that. I think 10 is probably the fair number here. I think the Ravens, listen, they probably end up winning 27-17, something along those lines, right? And just get inside the number here. But the way Flacco and Myles Garrett, I can't talk about it enough, the way they were playing last week, like they are always going to be scary when Flacco is slinging it around. He was hitting Cedric Tillman. Jerry Jeudy, if Jerry Jeudy was any good, should have had twice as many yards. And again, like Harold Fannin, Dylan Sampson, like these are names that you would probably should know a little bit more about because, A, they were really, really good college players, and B, they were really, really good last week. And when you start looking around and going like, well, Flacco's putting the ball in spots here where everybody but Jerry Jeudy is actually catching it, like that offense is pretty dangerous. And again, when Myles Garrett, like it's not like people aren't aware of Myles Garrett. The Bengals were doing the best they could to stop Myles Garrett from being a wrecker, and that guy was wrecking bleep up. And so I don't know that the Ravens offensive line is necessarily capable of stopping Garrett, but again, it's a different deal, right? Because it's not a drop back passer. The Browns have seen Lamar Jackson before. They're certainly aware of what he and Derrick Henry are capable of. I get why the line is high. I just think it's a little too high. Let's take the Browns here plus the points.
Yeah, Browns plus the points here. I like that. I'm with you. Let's keep it rolling here as we go to the Seahawks at the Steelers. Steelers and Aaron Rodgers at home. Home debut for Aaron Rodgers. Laying 3 points. I don't like the 3 points, but I like it a lot better than 3.5s that we've been seeing. And Aaron Rodgers looked pretty
Right.
spicy against his former team. I think he has to be able to maintain at least some level of hypeness for the first home game in front of what will be a ruckus crowd in Pittsburgh, fired up for Mr. A-Rod. Maybe he runs out with the American flag again. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Time will
Oh
tell.
God.
Time will tell. I'm joking. But
True
I know what I
patriot.
didn't. Right. True Patriot Aaron Rodgers. But you know what I didn't like? Sam Darnold. And I know it was against the Niners defense, which is pretty good, but Sam Darnold did not look that good last week. And overall, their offense looks like, JSN looks like a beast, like he's about to have a mega year, but kind of will have to
Mhm.
because it doesn't look like they have much there on offense. But overall, I don't like laying the 3 points, but I'm going to do it with the Steelers. Steelers at home. I'll take that. Steelers winning by a field goal. They actually have a kicker you can trust as well. So
Yeah,
here we are. Here we are.
that's right.
Steelers -3.
Yeah, we're all going to talk about Aaron Rodgers and 4 touchdowns and this, that, or whatever. I think this is a game that the Steelers defense needs to be like, yo, last week was not good.
Mhm.
And they don't have the same challenge in dealing with and the unfamiliarity that is Justin Fields, who every time
Mhm.
Justin Fields steps on the field, it's going to be a little unfamiliar, right? Like, what's he doing? Like, where's he going with this? Like, what kind of
Yeah.
offense is this team going to run? Like, how much are they going to run Fields? All right, if we're constantly looking in the backfield, like are guys getting beat over the top or on the sidelines and that sort of thing. So like that's a tricky proposition. Sam Darnold's not like that, man. Sam Darnold is not like that. It is pocket passer, backpedaling. Like, is my offensive line going to hold up? Sure enough, right? He gets an offensive lineman like buried back into him for the key like fumble, defensive play essentially in that game. And again, if I'm the Steelers defense, I'm like, that was bad last week. This is our chance at home, crowd noise, 1-0 team. Like for whatever all the jokes we make about Aaron Rodgers and how he's just a goofball, like if he's your quarterback and you're 1-0 and you're a Steelers fan and given some of the quarterbacks that they've had out there for the
Oh,
last couple of years, you're just blindly into it. Like you don't care, man. Like let's just win football games. Like this isn't, a
I can't lie to you.
miscongeniality contest.
We were just talking about my Niners, and I can't lie to you. If Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback of the Niners, I'd be like, yo, all right.
And
You
they were
talk.
winning. Yeah.
Yes, you could talk 1-0.
Yeah,
All
and
right,
like
let's
as long
go.
as they're winning and things are going swimmingly,
Yes, cool.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you'll
And
take
I have
that.
Christian McCaffrey. No, I
That's
hear you. I
right.
hear you.
So I mean the Steelers offense obviously somewhat of a hybrid of like the Arthur Smith like super annoying, super conservative, and then Rodgers being like hold up, let me cook type of a deal. The Seahawks like to be super aggressive, right? Like there's going to be like cover zero scenarios and like all of that kind of stuff where Rodgers is going to diagnose that stuff. And by the way, like he just got his like quote unquote revenge. If he's any kind of a teammate to his boy DK Metcalf, right? We should be seeing DK Metcalf, who played against these guys in practice, who
Yeah.
probably thinks that, like, the corners on Seattle, as sort of ballyhooed as they are,
Mhm.
he probably thinks they can't cover him, right? And so again, like there's a couple of still like chip on their shoulder type deals here on this team that even if Rodgers is maybe content with beating the Jets, we're talking still pretty warm out. Like he hasn't gotten beat up the way that Rodgers eventually going to get beat up. We kind of said this last week, right? Like the time, or even last year, the time to bet on Aaron Rodgers is early in the season before things get sour, both like on the field and off. Yeah, hard for me to
Yeah.
argue with this necessarily from a market perspective. Like, yeah, the Steelers got a little bit of a boost, but again, they were getting some credit for being kind of an average team, and so they're a little bit above average. Maybe part of that is thanks to a 60-yard field goal, which is a little bit dicey to kind of go like, well, what would the opinion be if Chris Boswell doesn't pump a 60-yard field goal in there? Kind of a drag that maybe we would have gotten -2.5 because this line was -1.5 over the course of the offseason. But again, from like a football handicapping perspective, I was never high on the Seahawks this season, and nothing last week necessarily disproved any of that, right down to like Cooper Kupp being, we talked about Travis Kelce being washed. I was on a Cooper Kupp under like 30 something yards, in that game. And it was like, yeah, one easily, because like that's a downgrade. And so Seattle's downgraded in a couple of different ways here. I think at quarterback, and obviously at quote unquote, star or X, receiver. Jackson Smith and Jigba is not enough for me to be sort of like, all right, like the Seahawks are coming down the tracks here. Give me the Steelers here. Maybe not many more weeks for the Steelers once things get a little colder, but this week I have no problem with you taking the Steelers.
Yeah, Steelers laying the 3 points at home. We'll see what Aaron Rodgers has in store. We'll also see what my guy Money Mike has in store as his Dolphins are at home hosting the New England Patriots. Money Mike, obviously
Money
being
Mike.
Mike McDaniels for those who might be new to the program and our relationship with the Dolphins here. Yeah, things kind of went how you discussed it last week for the Dolphins. Wasn't a good showing for them at all. And I wrote down this simple. I want nothing to do with Money Mike. Let's just keep playing this out and see how it goes. And I know the Patriots, I was on the Patriots last week. They did not look too good. Yeah. But guess what? This might be the perfect game for Mike Vrabel to get his first win as Patriots head coach. Because if we think that Money Mike is not that good of a coach, I still believe Vrabel is good. And it might take a couple weeks to like fully implement some things here. But I will gladly take the Patriots plus 1.5 in Miami against the Dolphins.
Yeah, which Mike do you trust here, right? I almost tweeted you last week.
Oh, I forgot. Money Mike. Yeah, that's true. Sorry. Which Money Mike would I be talking about here? That's true.
That's true. Yeah. No, I almost tweeted you just like Money Mike, period. And like, that's it. Because I'm just watching this game. And again, like it was one of my sort of featured games because of the confidence that I had in the Colts. And you and I talked about the idea of the Colts being underrated this season, the Dolphins being overrated this season, despite what some, pundits, I guess, would sort of try to tell you some legitimately bad takes on the Dolphins leading up to this season and this game, and like just people out here trying to zig and zag where it's just wildly unnecessary. But we won't go down that road. I'm watching that game. Listen, I am, yeah. I'm out here. I'm vigilant, right? I'm keeping my head on a swivel. We get an early start here. Touchdown. We're up, 14, 17, whatever. Again, hopefully those who, have an opportunity to get, whenever you're betting the money line, please do so at a book that pays out after a 17-point lead, because at least that was the case. But again, I got Colts in contests or whatever. And point is, I'm always ready for the bad beat. I probably could have been more ready for the Baltimore one, right? I'm a little bit down on myself for not being super vigilant on that, but that was so late in the game that I thought that, we might have had that locked in. This was half a quarter into the Colts and Dolphins game. Oh, yeah. I'm watching this going like the Colts are blowing these dudes off the ball on the line of scrimmage offensively. Right. There were holes being opened that honestly, I was a little disappointed in Jonathan Taylor for not housing more of these, because I'm like, my guy, you have a laneway that is being opened up because the Dolphins are just patently uninterested in being in this game. And like people called them soft and this, that, or whatever. And of course, like we're on the under on the win total and all that kind of stuff. Right. And then, of course, people do the zag thing, and it's like, well, everybody thinks the Dolphins are going to stink, so everybody has to be wrong. It's like, and maybe it's the reverse of the Packers thing. It's like, or maybe just everybody's right because, like, we all have enough information these days to look at the secondary and go like, ugh, gross, or the offensive line and go, ugh, yikes, and then just like look at all the news that every week comes out of Miami and just go like, nope, don't like that. And so, like, after watching last week's game, I'm like, it's going to change because they are playing at home. Like, I know you're supposed to like the Dolphins and these South Florida teams in like the hot weather and all of that kind of stuff. Man, I'm going to trust Mike Vrabel to have his guys ready after a loss to a Vegas team that I think is going to be better than people think. And we've talked about that as well.
Well, we'll get to them.
Yeah, man. Like, I'm going to just dare the Dolphins here to beat me over the next like little while until they do. And maybe that happens this week. And you just go, you know what? Tipping my cap. Like, didn't think you had it in you here. Again, I think you got the better coach here with the Patriots, and as much as they lost to the Raiders, and people are going to kind of hand wring about that, I don't really think it was that bad of a loss. I think that Geno Smith is certainly more capable than people think, and I think Tua, frankly, isn't as capable as people think. So again, I'm not going to get in your way here with the Patriots.
Yeah, I don't know who's more cooked between Money Mike or Tua, or if that's just a package deal
It's a
of being cooked. But either
conjunction
way,
of cooked. Yeah. It's a
right?
jambalaya of cookedness. Tyreek, throw Tyreek
Exactly.
into the pot. Jalen Waddle is constantly leaving games in the middle of it with an
Yeah,
injury. Like it's a cook festival. Bradley
it's a
Chubb,
bad
things
scene.
of that nature.
Speaking of a
Yeah.
bad scene, though, we'll move on to the Panthers at the Cardinals. Cardinals at home, favored by 6.5 points. I'm on the Panthers here just because I don't want to take the Cardinals
Sure.
again back-to-back weeks to be favored
Yeah.
against anybody by 6.5 points. As
Yeah.
mentioned, your man Spence almost had a chance to win
Yeah.
the game. And I know some
I
people might
know.
want to throw out, oh, well, Kyler Murray had the runs right before the game, which I didn't know that rule. If you talk to a doctor before the game, they have to put that on the injury report. I didn't know that's how that went. I'd never
Oh,
heard
I
that.
didn't know that.
I heard somebody
Okay.
say that, but I don't know if that's the case. But again, why
Usually
else would we
Kyler Murray
know?
runs is a good thing. So,
But
you
again,
know.
why else would we have to know that my guy had the runs before the game? Right? That's something that I might want to keep under wraps. It's like, say I have a bad ankle or something. Right? Come up
That's
with
right.
something else.
That's right.
Oh, my wrist is a little
Yeah.
short, a little sore. I don't know. But anyways,
Yeah.
as mentioned, yeah, just give me the points here because there's too many points for me to lay with Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. And I think the Panthers, they're not going to be a good team, but 6.5 points, I'll take that. I'll take that level of spicy.
Yeah, it's just it's like Carolina, like, come on, guys. Like, let's do something. Hey, it's just like you're killing me here. So, yeah, I'm gonna give Carolina the shot here, right? Next week it's a home game against Atlanta, and that, again, I'm always wary. There's been a couple of
Mhm.
spots here too where it's like back-to-back road games to start the season, and you're like, all right, I guess I'm
It's
gonna do
tough.
that. I think that's probably more of an issue in the middle of the season than it is at the
Mhm.
start of the season, because I don't know that anybody's really settled even when you're playing at home. So my point is, like, I could say that, like, I'm out on Carolina if they don't cover this game. I can't believe Arizona covered that game last week. There was that last, I don't know if you saw the last play, like third down, third and goal or whatever, third and need to score. And Juwan Johnson goes up and he catches the ball, but he like loses it on the way down, like when
Yes.
he hits the ground. And I just go, like, I feel like week 3 he catches that ball. Or like in
Yeah.
29, like in the olden days of like 2021, when we used to see upsets in the NFL, like that play happened and everybody goes like, oh, can you believe it? And like Spencer, and they go for 2 and they win the game, and like Spencer Rattler's just running around with his finger in the air. It's like, that feels very much like a 4 years ago type thing. But now in the NFL, like when an underdog dares to come close to winning, some jackass kicker has to come in and like miss a kick, or the ball kind of gets jarred loose, or this, that, or whatever. And, so yes, they cover by half a point there, but like, again, look at the box score, man. I think you got to downgrade the Cardinals in this one.
Mhm.
So I'm going to be furious when they end up covering again by a half a point, but I think I'm right there probably with you. And again, I'm not going to say like, no, this is it for me in Carolina, because again, they haven't played a
No.
home game yet. And so I'm not going
Yeah.
to sell a team entirely until they at least play a home game. And listen, maybe they get blown out here and we end up getting like +3 against the Falcons next week and we get suckered into that whole deal with Carolina. I don't know. Like, we could be down bad here when it comes to the Carolina Panthers after a few weeks. But yeah, I'd like to think, listen, we're indoors. We shouldn't have to deal with any sort of weird like 2-hour break in the middle of this game. Again, like I said, who knows if that had anything to do with it. Let's just get just get better effort here out of Carolina. Let's get some better offense. So ugh, it's
Totally
gross,
agree.
but you're right. I think it's too many points.
Yeah. We'll see how that one plays out for sure. And I think the Kyler Murray Cardinals thing helped me to a money line parlay that ended up being a lot more of a sweat than it needed to be, having the Cardinals and the Niners and the Bengals, right? And all of those teams probably should have
Jesus.
lost. Do you know what I mean? Just
Jesus,
complete
Sheldon.
insanity,
Oh
right?
boy.
But hey, NFL is back, baby. That's what's nothing but a little sweat on a
Unreal.
Sunday afternoon, right? Let's move on
Unreal.
though to the Broncos at the Colts. Broncos
Yeah.
-2.5 at Indy. Not trying to overreact to the Colts and Danny Dimes versus the Dolphins, but this is going to be an interesting
Yeah.
test for Danny Dimes and the Colts against Broncos defense that, we still think is highly rated. Also very interested in seeing how
Yeah.
Bo Nix bounces back from kind of a little shaky week 1, but less
Right.
than a field goal on the road. I'm still going to take the Broncos here, laying the 2.5 points on the road because I think that they are the better team and the Danny Dimes hype might be a little too much for me at this point. So less than a field goal, I'm good with taking what I believe still to be the better team by a lot, and Broncos minus 2.5.
Yeah, and it's part of the deal is like, all right, I like both these teams relative to market, right? It's like
Mhm.
why we had Denver in Survivor. Obviously, I shouldn't even say better than market because Denver closed -9 in that game last week. So like market's still pretty into them.
Yeah,
But like this line, which was 3.5 in the summer and is now 2.5, right? Crosses the key
interesting.
number, which
Interesting.
means either that's because people are a little bit down on the Broncos or they're up on the Colts. And the reality is it's probably a combination of the two to cross
Mhm.
that key number. So I look at it like that, where I go, the other element to all of this is like what we felt about the Dolphins that we just talked about.
Mhm.
And if we thought that the Dolphins might stink this year, and then the Dolphins do stink, you then go, things might have looked a little too easy. Because again, you don't see lines get blown off the ball the way that the Colts were able to do against the Dolphins last week. And they're not going to be able to do that against the Denver defense.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of sort of room between where they played and where the ceiling is for the Denver offense. And so, like the Colts can drop this one and still be very much a factor in the AFC South, which is kind of where I have them being, right? Just kind of being in that mix with Jacksonville, obviously with the 0-1 Houston Texans, and hell, who knows what happens with the Tennessee Titans going forward. Maybe it's a 4-horse race in that division. So it's like, yeah, as much as I think, yeah, Colts could win 9 or 10 games, potentially win a sort of low bar AFC South. It's a bit of a step up in weight class here. And again, we didn't really get a great showing from the Broncos. So I imagine Sean Payton is in some bleeps this week. So again, I'm not going to tell you, hey, like you got to grab the Colts here plus 2.5. Again, they might have done a lot of work against a pretty bad Dolphins team, as far as we know.
Super tough one there for sure, but interested to see how both of these teams, like in terms of if you were going to overreact, these are two teams that you could be overreacting towards. So it'll be interesting to see
Yeah.
how that plays out in week 2.
Yeah.
Sunday night football action. The Atlanta Falcons are on the road in Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Vikings 4.5-point favorites. Tip of the cap to JJ McCarthy. As I said earlier, did the thing. But more importantly, Kevin O'Connell showing he is one of the better coaches in the league by a lot. I know he's one of your guys that you always boost, and it was great to see him open
Oh
up
yeah.
the playbook in the second half and just show that he's got a lot in his bag, as the kids say. But 4.5 points, a little too much for me. In this one here, I'm going to take the Falcons at this 4.5 number, nicely in the Vegas zone. The Falcons get the ball to Bijan, when in doubt, just figure out a way to get him the ball, and Penix,
Right.
maybe then you don't have to be like diving all the time and fumbling the ball.
Turn
Like
back
I
the
thought he
clock to
fumbled it
his
out of
Indiana
bounds,
days. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it was close.
Oh,
Yeah.
too much, just too much going on there. But either way, plus 4.5. I'm on the Falcons. Michael Penix, if he's not, he's entertaining. He's entertaining, right?
Yeah.
So give me some points. I'll take that. 4.5 points. I'm on the Falcons.
Yeah, again, I don't have any problem with that, right? It's short week for Minnesota. Somebody, they were certainly jumping and hugging, right, in the
Oh yeah.
locker room after. I don't know if you saw that. We don't like any of those things.
Nope.
And listen, Atlanta, probably. What are we supposed to say about Atlanta, right? Like they probably should have won, could have won, like that game against Tampa Bay. Like you're just watching, going like, yeah, this is every Falcons Buccaneers game I've ever seen in the history of my
Ever.
life, right? Like, yeah, it's like, yeah. I literally said like in my sort of summary column, my NFL market report is like, yeah, yep, like that's just what you're watching that game. You're just everything is yep. Chase McLaughlin misses the extra point. You're like, yep.
Mhm.
Falcons drive all the way down, get a field goal opportunity. You're like, yep. Younghoe Koo misses. You're like, yep. like, yeah, this is all like part of the plan here, right? So, but I think the Falcons are going to be this team that, like, if anytime the points are involved in the Falcons game, you take those points, and that means like going against the Falcons. That means for the Falcons here. I think obviously like people can be a little bit afraid of Minnesota and the concept of them being at home, prime time, et cetera, et cetera. I think the Falcons and the Vikings are probably not all that far from each other when it comes to like an actual quality. Whereas the Vikings are rated at like 55 out of 100 right now in the estimated market ratings, and the Falcons are kind of down with the Colts at like 44, 45. Colts and like Patriots. And I just go like, no, I think the Falcons are probably better than the Colts, and certainly at the moment better than the Patriots, and therefore maybe this line should be like 3.5.
Mhm.
um I think it's 3. You would start to see like Vikings money come in here. So, you're getting, I think, probably an extra point here because of just because the Falcons are, like we said, just kind of doing too much as a whole out there. So maybe doing too much when you're getting the points is at least a little bit more viable than, when you basically need them to win the game, which is essentially what was asked of them with, I think that game closed like 1.5 or 1 last week. So yeah, let's hope it comes down to some stupid field goal that either gets missed or made on Sunday night, and we're all like, wow, another crazy prime time game. It's like, yeah, well, Falcons covered the whole way. So we'll see what happens.
Yes, we shall see what happens. I will take those points with the Falcons on the road plus 4.5 to Monday night. And there are 2 Monday night games for us. First up, we got the Bucs on the road in Houston to take on the Texans. I'm on the Bucs plus 2.5 here. Baker, I mean, listen, people that have been rolling with us here for a long time, I know and enjoy my affinity for Baker. Anytime I bet on him, they lose.
Right.
Anytime I bet against them, they win. But watching, as
Hmm.
soon as that like drive happened and you see they had a drive, I'm sitting there watching. I'm like, oh no, they're finding out a way to get a touchdown. They got a flag, which gave them an extra chance there. He took advantage. He still made the
Hmm.
plays, right? Cool.
Yeah.
Texans defense, I thought looked solid. Their offense, probably the opposite of solid. Give me Baker here plus two and a
Yeah.
half. But as mentioned, I'm prepared to have this go the other way because that's just my relationship with Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, and my relationship, we always have to do the reminder, right? Does Baker have a chip on his shoulder this week? And they
Ooh.
won last week, and he went through the game-winning touchdown pass, right? So we may be without a chip on one's shoulder for Baker Mayfield, and like that's scary. And then he can lose this game, and then they're going to play, the Jets at home next week, and the chip will have returned, right? And so, um, here's the matchup for me that I wouldn't have hated it necessarily because I go and I see, Houston minus 1.5 was the like look ahead line here, and somehow, despite Houston losing and the Buccaneers winning, the line is actually higher, right, than that look ahead line. So it's now minus 2.5, and you would normally go like, what? The Tristan Wirfs issue, right?
Yes.
Offensive line. Let's get into the trenches. Being without your star offensive tackle against the Houston defense. Will Anderson, Daniel Hunter, et cetera, et cetera. Like listen, if our biggest problem is like can CJ Stroud and the Texans offense like get it together, that's actually a pretty good problem, I think, to have for the Texans in a prime time, Monday night game. Whereas the Bucs have like a pretty obvious sort of fault here with Wirfs being out against a really good defense. So that's to me the biggest sort of question mark here. Like if this thing crawled up to 3, I'd have to have some reasonable conversations with myself about taking Tampa Bay plus the 3. But
Right.
again, here's another one where Houston's going from road to home. I've always kind of liked Houston in prime time because I think that place can get a little hotter than in, sort of a 1 o'clock game or whatever. And I think these two teams are, as the point spread suggests, by making Houston a small favorite at home, are pretty similar. But I just kind of like the spot for Houston. I like that mismatch when it comes to Houston's defense and the Tampa Bay offense. And by the way, like we talked about Houston's makeshift offensive line, I got a lot of respect for the front seven for the Rams, right? Like, Young and Fisk and
Yeah.
and of course Verse, right? I don't have that same regard for the Buccaneers front,
Okay.
Sam, right? I mean, obviously Vita Vea's out there like being a rock, and you have some familiar names that just like haven't really turned into kind of stars in a way. And they're relying on a lot of veterans, and you got a second straight road game here for the Buccaneers. And so I think this might be a little bit of a somewhat of a buy low spot here on the Texans, even though the market isn't necessarily like downgrading them to make it an obvious buy low spot. I just think that, like, again, you're going, oh, get some points here with Baker Mayfield. And I'm like, I don't know if this is the spot for getting points with Baker Mayfield.
There's a late switch there for me in this one. I'm gonna ride with
Oh,
the Texans here. I'm riding with the Texans here. Let's
okay.
go. I want the Texans to succeed. I'm rooting for my guy D'Amico. His defense is just always ready, and I like that matchup. Yeah, I like it. In. Late switch. One more Monday nighter. As mentioned, the Chargers at the Raiders. Showdown in the AFC West. Raiders, 3.5-point home dogs. You know me here. We discuss this a lot. Home dogs in a divisional game, getting more than a field
Yeah.
goal. I'm going to be on the Raiders in
Monday
plus
night.
3.5. Monday night, prime time game. The Chargers, they looked all right. But Geno, as you mentioned earlier on in the pod, hey, they looked really, really good relative to what I think expectations were, talking about the Raiders heading into this season, right? And I think adding the stability from the top down in Pete Carroll, we saw that in week 1. Why wouldn't we see that again in week 2 at home debut for both Geno and for Pete Carroll? And as you mentioned, prime time, I think that matters. The Chargers traveling back. I know it's from Friday to Monday, but that's still coming from Brazil to Vegas. Like, there's a lot going on here.
For sure.
That's a tough stretch.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take the points. And let's be honest, what's the most likely scenario of the AFC West? After 2 weeks, having a bunch of 1-1 teams, right? You could kind of see that playing out. Doesn't that just kind of make
totally
sense? Right.
That's
Anyways,
right.
3.5 points. That's where I'm on with the Raiders.
I'm right there with you when it comes to that like travel element, right? Because if you play in Germany or London or whatever, like you are asked, hey, do you want a bye week the next week, right? And I think historically speaking, it was either obviously you're just going to get the bye week, or most teams are like, yeah, we would like a bye week after that. And obviously that has something to do with like the travel and the 5-hour time difference if it's the East, or even further, you go across the United States. Obviously, Brazil, it's not the same time difference type of a deal, but like I go through and I'm just actually kind of looking at last year where it was Philadelphia and Green Bay, and Green Bay came home, played on a Sunday against a Colts team. Now, again, it's tricky because they had Malik Willis because Love had gotten hurt at the end of that game, and they end up beating the Colts 16-10 because Malik Willis is out here like making some plays on the ground.
Yes.
And it was just this like super grimy game, but they win, because I think, the Colts last year like weren't particularly good, and Anthony Richardson certainly was not any good there. I think 17 of 34 with 3 interceptions. So like you're gonna win a lot of games. Malik Willis was 12 of 14, and the Packers won that game. All that is to say, I don't think we're getting a ton of information from that, but like, maybe the Packers probably would have normally taken care of the Colts a little bit more aggressively. As for Philadelphia last year, do you remember what week 2 was for Philadelphia?
No, actually,
It's a tough
I
one.
don't.
I don't know if it's tough or not. Monday night against the Falcons, your man's Kirk
Oh,
Cousins
yes.
leading. Remember when they threw the ball to Saquon on 4th down and he dropped it? And so then the
Yes.
Falcons got the ball back, and it wasn't swag surfing because it was in Philly, but it left like the Philly crew like just stunned out there. Drake London with the game winning touchdown,
Yes.
22-21. So I mean, we're going off the smallest of sample sizes when
Yeah,
it
yeah,
comes to
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But my point is like, it's week 2, so they're not going to give anybody a bye week, and like they do this Brazil thing for legal reasons because like you can't have a game on anywhere near like the United States on a Friday or whatever that thing is, where they can't do
So
it next
strange.
year because of the way the calendar falls. It's just all bizarre. the point is, it's like, yeah, that's a pretty significant travel. And like, as you mentioned, right? Like, it's a big deal. I also go back to like the college thing. I've heard from everybody who plays in these like Ireland games the first week of college football. And they go like, you know what? It took us like 2 weeks to get like our deal right after that. And so, maybe that ends up being a thing for the Chiefs, but the Chiefs are at least playing at home. The Chargers have to go on the road to a Vegas team that like might be just 1-0. But Vegas will get excited about 1-0. They will be excited about Pete Carroll. They will be excited about Geno Smith. They will be excited about Ashton Genty. They will be excited about coming home to a 1-0 deal. So, yeah, this is from a market perspective, this is an upgrade on the Chargers to get this thing as high as 3.5. It was 3 over the course of the offseason. My numbers made it 2.5. We're talking about 3.5 points. Yeah, man. Like I'm right there with you. I've already given it out on my podcast on Tuesday, man. Get the Raiders now at plus 3.5. I don't really think it's going to stay at 3.5 by the time this game kicks off, but we'll see. I'm happy to grab plus 3.5 right now with the Raiders.
Yeah, super interesting stuff there. And a lot of good matchups in week 2, right? Like normally you have a bunch of
Yeah.
games on every week's schedule where you're kind of like, nah, that game's pretty boring or nothing really to pique my interest there. But there's kind of a little something in
Sure.
all of these games, and it's week 2, or maybe that's just my overall excitement that the NFL is back. But also, with the NFL being back, that also means that my guy, Mr. Matt Russell, has a lot more content for you as the week goes on. So where can the good people find all of that information from you, my friend?
Yeah, you know what? I think all you got to do is just Google Matt Russell sports betting. And I think you're going to find the Substack, which is called The Window. Um, we've got free stuff over there. We of course have the paywall up there, as Substack is, by and large a paid service to read all of the stuff, best bets, round robin, underdog, moneyline parlay, um, our fake fantasy football team, which is 10 player props on a Sunday. That's always super fun. And then primetime weeknight games, Thursday night football, Monday night football. The Monday night football stuff, double header, is going to be available over at Yahoo Sports, who thankfully this year is providing everybody the free window content over at Yahoo Sports. So again, you can type in Yahoo Sports Matt Russell and find my sort of quote unquote, you know, homepage there, if you will. Tons of college football stuff as well. We talk about the big games over at Yahoo, and we talk about my best bets, the Saturday 7 over at the Substack. I've had a nice little start to that this season with a 9-5 record through 2 weeks of the Saturday 7. Yes, 9-5 equals 14. 2 times 7 equals 14. The math checks out, Sheldon. The math checks out. Always have to kind of wonder about whether the math is checking out.
I like it, my dude. I like it. And of course, you can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Shell Alexander and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. You can find the podcast on Apple, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. Just search Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe. Whenever the pod's out, you got it right away. But just know you will find it each and every Thursday, all that other fun stuff. And as I always say, I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is Clutch Picks Sports Betting Podcast, as always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.